She was just a human maid, until she taught 9 alien languages to the son of the American alien. The crystal goblet shattered against the stone floor of the Arizona ranch house with a sound like breaking starlight. But what made Daniel Blackthorne freeze in absolute terror was not the destruction of his father's most precious possession. It was the string of words that erupted from the mouth of their supposedly simple human maid, words that flowed in perfect grammatical harmony through 9 different alien languages that no human being should have known existed, much less mastered with the fluency of a native speaker. Emma Sinclair stood amid the glittering fragments of what had been a ceremonial drinking vessel from the Rigel system, her plain brown dress and humble white apron marking her as nothing more than the frontier housemaid she had claimed to be for the past 2 years. But the linguistic symphony that poured from her lips as she surveyed the damage told a story of knowledge and experience that challenged every assumption about her origins and capabilities. She began in Andromedian High Court, the ceremonial language used only by the galaxy's most elite diplomatic corps, expressing formal apologies with the precise inflections that indicated deep cultural understanding. She shifted seamlessly into Centaurian battle cant, acknowledging the warrior significance of the broken vessel with the respectful tones that soldiers used when honoring fallen comrades. Her voice carried the harmonic overtones of vegan stellar speech as she offered to accept full responsibility for the accident, then dropped into the complex mathematical poetry of Arcturian science tongue to analyze exactly how the crystal's molecular structure had failed under impact stress. Daniel watched in fascination and growing alarm as Emma continued through Syrian trade speak, offering to compensate for the loss according to interstellar commercial protocols, before flowing into the ritualistic cadences of Betelgeuse sacred script, formally requesting forgiveness from any spiritual entities that might have been offended by the destruction of an artifact that held ceremonial significance. She concluded with a perfect recitation in Polarian memory verse, committing every detail of the incident to the kind of permanent record that served as historical documentation among the galaxy's most ancient civilizations, then added a heartfelt personal apology in what Daniel recognized as Aldebaranian heartsong, the intimate language that starfarers use to express their deepest emotions to those they cared about most. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of boots on the wooden floor, as Nathaniel Blackthorne, owner of the most successful ranch in the Arizona Territory and secret agent of the Galactic Observation Corps, entered his parlor to investigate the commotion. His pale blue eyes took in the broken crystal, his son's expression of shocked bewilderment, and most significantly, the electromagnetic aura surrounding Emma Sinclair that his enhanced alien senses could now detect clearly for the first time since her arrival at the ranch. "Emma," Nathaniel said, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone who had just discovered that fundamental assumptions about his household needed immediate revision. "I believe we need to have a conversation that should have taken place considerably sooner than now." For 2 years, Emma had been the perfect frontier housemaid, hardworking, unassuming, possessed of just enough education to help with young Daniel's schooling, but not so much as to seem out of place in a remote ranching community. She had arrived in response to Nathaniel's advertisement for domestic help, carrying references from a family in California who had supposedly found her services excellent but no longer required a full-time employee. Her credentials had been impeccable, her manner appropriately deferential, and her domestic skills exactly what a successful rancher would expect from experienced household staff. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothing, and helped manage the 1,000 details of frontier life with quiet efficiency that made her presence seem both essential and invisible. But Daniel had noticed things about Emma that he hadn't quite known how to interpret. The way she sometimes paused while dusting his father's study, her eyes lingering on books and artifacts that appeared to be ordinary frontier possessions, but which Daniel had begun to suspect might be something more than they seemed. The careful attention she paid to his lessons, as if she were learning from them rather than simply helping him practice. Most puzzling of all, the strange dreams he had been experiencing since her arrival, dreams filled with images of distant worlds, alien cities, and forms of life that his imagination should not have been capable of creating. "Ma'am," Daniel said, finding his voice despite the shock of what he had just witnessed, "how do you know those languages? And why did breaking a goblet make you speak them?" Emma looked at the fragments of crystal scattered across the floor, then at Daniel's confused face, then at Nathaniel's carefully controlled expression. and made a decision that would transform all their lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin with dignity that no mere housemaid should have possessed, and began to speak in English that carried subtle harmonics indicating it was not her first language. "My name is not Emma Sinclair," she said, her voice carrying authority that had been carefully hidden behind years of humble service. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez Chen, former first linguist of the Terran Colonial Intelligence Division, and I have been in hiding on your ranch because certain elements within galactic civilization have placed a very high price on my capture, and returned to facilities where my knowledge of xenolinguistic protocols could be extracted through means I prefer not to experience." The revelation hit both Nathaniel and Daniel like a plasma charge to their carefully maintained assumptions about their household's composition and security. Nathaniel's mission as a deep-cover observation agent had included careful vetting of all personnel who came into contact with his operation, and his security protocols were supposed to prevent exactly the kind of compromised situation that Elena's presence represented. But Daniel's reaction went far beyond simple surprise at discovering their maid's true identity. The moment Elena revealed her linguistic expertise, something in his enhanced alien consciousness began to activate, systems that had been dormant since his birth suddenly coming online. As his mixed human-alien heritage responded to stimuli it had been genetically programmed to recognize. "The dreams," Daniel said, his voice carrying new harmonics as his vocal cords began adapting to produce sounds that no purely human throat could create. "Since you arrived, I've been having dreams about other worlds, other peoples, languages that I understood even though I'd never heard them before. You've been teaching me while I slept, haven't you?" Elena's expression shifted from defensive caution to something approaching wonder as she recognized the signs of awakening xenolinguistic capability in Daniel's enhanced physiology. "Not teaching," she corrected gently. "Awakening. Your father's people modified your genetic structure to include dormant linguistic matrices that could be activated when you encountered a sufficient variety of alien languages. I've been broadcasting subliminal language lessons through quantum entanglement fields while performing my household duties, and your enhanced consciousness has been absorbing and processing them at unconscious levels." The explanation revealed the true sophistication of Elena's knowledge and capabilities, while simultaneously exposing aspects of Daniel's nature that even Nathaniel hadn't fully understood. The boy's mixed heritage had apparently included potential that required specific triggers to unlock, and Elena's unconscious linguistic broadcasts had provided exactly the stimulus needed to activate his dormant xenolinguistic abilities. Nathaniel's response combined parental concern with professional alarm as he realized the implications of what had been occurring in his household without his knowledge or consent. "Dr. Vasquez Chen," he said, using her true name with the formal courtesy that interstellar protocol required when addressing recognized experts in galactic sciences. "You've been conducting unauthorized experiments on my son while posing as domestic help. I think you owe us a complete explanation of your presence here and your intentions regarding Daniel's development." What followed was perhaps the most unusual family conference in the history of the American frontier, as three individuals whose true natures had been carefully concealed from each other finally revealed the complete truth about their origins, capabilities, and the circumstances that had brought them together on a remote Arizona ranch. Elena's story revealed a career in xenolinguistics that had made her one of the galaxy's most valuable assets for interspecies communication and diplomatic protocol. Her ability to master alien languages wasn't just scholarly achievement, but included enhanced cognitive capabilities that allowed her to understand the psychological and cultural frameworks that gave meaning to different forms of communication. Her expertise had made her invaluable for first contact situations, treaty negotiations, and intelligence operations that required deep understanding of how different species conceptualized reality and expressed complex ideas. But her knowledge had also made her a target for factions that wanted to use her abilities for conquest, manipulation, and exploitation of less advanced civilizations. The crisis that had forced her into hiding involved her discovery of a conspiracy to use xenolinguistic manipulation to destabilize developing civilizations throughout the galaxy. Her refusal to participate had made her a liability that certain powerful interests were determined to eliminate, leaving her with no choice but to disappear into the most remote corners of known space. Earth had seemed like the perfect hiding place, a primitive world where her advanced knowledge could be concealed behind the facade of simple domestic service, while she waited for political conditions to change enough to allow her return to legitimate galactic civilization. Nathaniel's ranch had offered the isolation and security she needed, while providing her with meaningful work that didn't require her to use the dangerous expertise that had made her so many enemies. But Daniel's presence in the household had changed everything. Her enhanced senses had immediately detected his mixed heritage and dormant capabilities, and her scientific curiosity had compelled her to begin the unconscious linguistic broadcasts that would help him realize his potential. What she hadn't expected was how much the experience would affect her own understanding of language, consciousness, and the possibilities for growth that existed when different forms of intelligence learned from each other. Nathaniel's revelation of his own mission and Daniel's true nature completed the picture of a household where three individuals with extraordinary capabilities had been living in careful deception while unconsciously influencing each other's development in ways that none of them had fully recognized. The crisis that would test their newfound honesty arrived just 3 days after Elena's true identity had been revealed. A ship landed in the desert beyond the ranch's eastern boundary, carrying representatives of the conspiracy that Elena had been hiding from, beings whose intentions toward both her knowledge and Daniel's unique capabilities were anything but benevolent. The linguistic abilities that had been awakening in Daniel suddenly became crucial, not just for communication, but for survival. The aliens who emerged from the ship spoke in languages that were designed to be incomprehensible to most forms of consciousness, using psychological manipulation embedded in grammatical structures to disorient and control anyone who heard them speak. But Daniel's enhanced linguistic matrices, activated by Elena's broadcasts and guided by her expertise, proved capable of not just understanding these manipulation languages, but reversing their effects. The boy who had been learning 9 alien languages in his sleep became the key to defending against enemies who wielded communication itself as a weapon. The battle that followed was fought as much with words as with conventional weapons, requiring Daniel to serve as both translator and psychic shield, while Elena and Nathaniel coordinated defensive strategies that incorporated both galactic technology and frontier tactics. The combination of Elena's xenolinguistic expertise, Nathaniel's military training, and Daniel's unique capabilities created a defense that the conspiracy's agents had never anticipated encountering on what they had assumed was a primitive world. The victory established the ranch not just as a safe haven, but as a center for resistance against the linguistic manipulation conspiracy. Elena's knowledge, combined with Daniel's growing abilities and Nathaniel's resources, created possibilities for exposing and defeating enemies who had been using communication as a weapon throughout the galaxy. The months that followed transformed their unusual household into something unprecedented in galactic history, a family unit where human and alien capabilities were combined with xenolinguistic expertise to create new forms of interspecies cooperation and understanding. Elena's role evolved from hidden maid to acknowledged partner in operations that would eventually reshape galactic policy regarding language, consciousness, and the rights of enhanced individuals. Daniel's education expanded far beyond the simple frontier schooling that had been his original curriculum. Under Elena's guidance, he mastered not just the 9 languages she had introduced through subliminal broadcasts, but dozens of additional forms of alien communication that prepared him for a future as one of the galaxy's premier xenolinguistic interpreters. But perhaps most importantly, Elena herself was transformed by the experience of teaching someone whose capabilities matched and in some ways exceeded her own. The isolation and fear that had driven her into hiding were replaced by purpose and belonging that came from using her knowledge to protect and nurture rather than simply to survive. Years later, as Elena stood in the parlor where her true identity had first been revealed, watching Daniel conduct diplomatic communications with species from across the galaxy while Nathaniel coordinated interstellar security operations, she often reflected on the moment when breaking a simple crystal goblet had shattered the careful deceptions that all of them had been maintaining. The maid who had seemed so ordinary had indeed been extraordinary, but not in the way that anyone had initially suspected. Her greatest gift had not been her mastery of alien languages, but her ability to recognize potential in others and nurture it with the kind of patience and dedication that transformed not just individuals but entire civilizations. The human maid who had taught 9 alien languages to the son of an American alien had discovered that the most important lessons were the ones that teacher and student learned together, and that true education occurred when knowledge was shared with love, respect, and commitment to helping others become more than they had ever imagined they could be. The languages that had seemed like academic curiosities had become the foundation for a new form of galactic communication that honored the diversity of consciousness while building bridges between species that had previously considered each other incomprehensible. The simple domestic accident that had revealed Elena's true nature had actually been the beginning of a revolution in interspecies understanding that would benefit civilizations throughout the galaxy for generations to come. In the end, Elena had learned that hiding her light under a bushel had been not just unnecessary but counterproductive, and that the greatest service she could provide was not concealment, but the generous sharing of gifts that could help others discover capabilities they had never known they possessed. The maid had indeed been extraordinary, but so had the family that had given her the chance to be herself and to use her talents in service of something greater than mere survival or individual achievement.